What's going on, guys? This is Colin with the Music City Accelerator, and today I wanted to compare the top spectral suppressors within Ableton. I've got 5 that I have on my own machine that I use a lot, and I kind of want to go through the application that I use for each of them. But there's many on the market here, but we have some free options, we have some paid options. And I'll show you kind of my use case for each one because each one does have its own kind of tone and flair. And if you're not familiar with what a spectral resonant suppressor is, basically it's taking our entire audio spectrum, splitting it up into thousands of little bins and tackling each of those bins individually within EQ. So it's different than a dynamic EQ, different than a regular EQ. It's a very, I would say, surgical and sharp resonant suppression. And I think you'd be surprised how these spectral resonant suppressors all have their own different tones and flavors. So let's check them all out. Okay, so first one on the list is going to be Soothe. I feel like this one is most common. I'm going to use this on our bass group here. And there's usually 2 applications I use for Soothe. Usually it's my go-to, so anytime I need any kind of spectral compression, I will just jump to this off rip. And my favorite thing about this is that we can actually change how sharp the individual notches that are doing the EQ are. So if I turn the sharpness all the way down, you see we're getting these really wide valleys, where if I turn it all the way up, we're doing spectral compression in a way that kind of brings the sound more to white noise than kind of keeping the tones and timbres in it. This selectivity has a little brief that we can get from it saying how selective the process is. I think that's a little vague, and for me it just is kind of a way to dial in the tone a little bit more if I'm hitting the right frequencies that I want this to tackle as much or as less as I want to. A lower sharpness and a lower selectivity will usually retain the tone of the sound a little bit more, whereas when I turn those up, again, it becomes more like white noise. Another time it can come in handy is if you have 2 layers that are hitting around the same point in the frequency spectrum, and you can tuck one layer behind another by using Soothe. So let me show you how to do that. So I'll pull up Soothe here, throw it onto this kind of gun rhythmic layer that we have in the background. And I'm going to turn on Soothe for it and route it to sidechain from our Sawtooth lead layer. So layer 32 for this project. And going into Soothe here, if I go ahead and turn on sidechain here, and then I can also confirm the layer that I'm referencing from the sidechain, which is going to be our Sawtooth here. So I'll turn off the sidechain cue so I'm no longer hearing that. And now what happens is that you'll see that my spectrum is going to reference where the Sawtooth plays and where it is and move out of the way of the resonances coming through the sawtooth versus generally the resonances of the sound itself. With sidechain on, and then with sidechain off. So you can see that the resonances are now being ducked based off another track's output. Little tiny changes like this isn't going to change the tone of the sound entirely, but will do enough to give us a leader to follow or a focal point within the mix so that anything that overlaps with that is in the back. Other thing that I really like to use Soothe for is actually to be a resonance expander. So if I have a sound that I might find to be too noisy, like this trombone right here, take Soothe like this, and I'll actually turn on the delta. So what this is going to do is actually tell us all the information which Soothe would normally be cutting. It's going to solo just that information. And using the EQs here, I can actually pull out a little bit more of our lows and our low mids. And then on this Soothe here, I'm actually just going to throw it in a parallel rack. So we now have our noisy sound as well as our resonance boosted sound. And that can be a cool way to give your sounds a little more bite as well. I don't think because there's a resonance that necessarily means it's a bad thing. Sometimes within a mix, it's really good to bring those up. And kind of like I showed you before, we can use this little EQ UI within Soothe to really find the sweet spots of what we want to cut or keep. but the default preset where we are cutting a lot of information around those papery frequencies from 2 to 4K, Soothe already sets that up and gives it a little boost right there so that we can attenuate for those more. Which is part of the reason why Soothe is such a go-to for me, that I can immediately load it up and the default preset is already fantastic. Speaking of which, it comes with many presets for many other types of sounds, even mastering or sound design. One other thing I'd like to point out about Soothe is the attack and release. This can actually revitalize a lot of the timbres that I was talking about Soothe will take away by adding a little bit of decay to how quickly it wants to attack or pull away from resonances. We can hear exactly the nuances of those by using the delta and hearing exactly what we're cutting. Still so much bite, but we're really taking away a lot of those harsh tones to just make this a buttery mix. Next up on the list is Gulfos. I feel like this is much more of a mixing spectral suppressor than sound designy or really kind of per layer. I more see myself using this on groups. The algorithm of this is just much more hidden, so we're really just doing this based off what we hear. What I do like about the algorithm of Gullfoss is that it's very transparent about what it's boosting, and it's not afraid to boost or tame kind of that low-mid frequency range. You can see we're getting a lot of action, a lot of dynamics in that low-mid range right above 200 here. If you want this to tackle kind of different areas, we can move this bias. Okay, welcome back, guys. I went through 2 crashes with Gullfoss, so we're not going to jump in it too much today. Basically, it is a really wide Soothe. We don't get any of the EQ controls that we get with Soothe, and it also has a little bit of a shelf feature to it, so we can either add brightness or lower the brightness, but not like a flat EQ shelf, but in a way that kind of respects the algorithm that does a lot of the spectral suppression within Soothe. So a lot of tone within that in itself. So the next spectral suppressor I really want to give the limelight to is going to be Anenina. So this is our free option for today. You can see that it suppresses pretty much all the way to white noise, which is really crazy, as well as we get attack and release controls. And then we can also change the tilt. So we attack more of the high end or more of the low end. And then we also get controls so we can leave the sub bass out of this. Honestly, I don't love Anenina. I don't think the tone of it is very good. Mostly what I would use this for is some sound design purposes. So maybe I'd go all the way down and then pull our delta out. And then now we just kind of have a little spectral gate action going on. Could be cool. Could make for some somber moments in music, kind of a sound that's trying to come through but can't quite speak. More sound designy than really application that I would find. It just doesn't have the micro control, and not even micro control, but really just controls that I'm looking for when I do need spectral suppression. So good riddance, Anenina. Next up is going to be Pro-Q4. So a brand new feature that we actually went over in our last episode is going to be the spectral suppression within Pro-Q4. So usually what you would do if we had Pro-Q3 is just regular dynamic EQ, and you would open this drop down, go to make dynamic, and then you can see now we've got a really wide dynamic EQ, but now we can go ahead and make it spectral. And you can see how we're attacking all those resonances uniquely and different from maybe parts of the spectrum where there aren't such big resonances. Where EQ4 becomes the GOAT is by opening this little extra window here. We can change the input on our spectral suppression by using sidechain or turning on this little blue arrow right here. We're able to change the spectral density, so kind of like what I was saying with Soothe, where we can either have broader or sharper bands. And then if we drop our attack and our release all the way down, you can see how quickly this spectral suppression is acting. It's kind of crazy. as well as we get spectral expansion. So I would say this is the most control that we have over any spectral suppressor. And I'm super impressed by Pro-Q4. I'm going to use it in my production all the time, especially the sidechain spectral compression, because we can really hone in the range of the spectrum that we do want to do that spectral compression on. The last one I'll mention is actually an all-stock one by Virtual Riot. This is available to download on his Patreon, I believe. And it's actually fairly simple. If I open up this rack here, you'll see that for each of these bands, he goes ahead and he just gets a really small portion of the band and then gets an envelope follower so that as audio pours into this band, this envelope follower can tell the EQ the type of ducking to do in that range. And from here we can change the attack. The Q of each of these bands, and the amount. I think this is pretty cool, and it's more of a proof of concept versus a real spectral compressor I would normally jump to. But it just shows that even if you're on a budget, we can't buy anything, and we don't like the sound of Anenina, that we can actually build out something like that within Ableton. By building it yourself, you can really set up the parameters that you want to tackle. So what do you guys think about these resonant suppressors? Did you find this helpful? To me, this is something that I use in every single song while sound designing, while doing early mixdown, while doing late mixdown, while mastering. This is a huge part of my process through and through, and I think no matter what genre of music you make, it should be important for you as well. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer them. And thank you again for watching. If you're interested in continued education, check out our Music City Accelerator program. Link in our bio.